I was sitting at my desk, a mug of cold coffee beside me, when the email popped up from Steve Barron, the guy who'd been nothing but smiles for the last decade. My gut twisted as I clicked it open. The first line hit me like a punch in the chest. We're parting ways. Your contributions are no longer aligning with company priorities. I stared at the words. Twice. My brain didn't want to process them. Not now, not after everything. I'd just buried my dad 3 days ago, taking my first sick leave in 6 months. I wasn't expecting a parade, but I sure wasn't expecting this. Not from Steve. I leaned back in my chair, my chest tight. I ran my fingers over the mouse, clicking the email again, like it might somehow change. But no. The meaning of it settled in. I was fired. It didn't make sense. I'd given everything to this company, my time, my energy. Hell, I'd spent more hours in that office than I had with my own family. And for what? A form email that felt like a slap in the face? The anger came slowly, building from disbelief. Betrayal, too. How could Steve do this? After everything? I couldn't even focus enough to clear my desk, my mind a whirlpool of rage and confusion. My hands felt heavy as I grabbed my things, one by one, but every move felt like I was sinking deeper into something I couldn't escape. Just as I was about to walk out, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Matt. They fired. I stared at it, numb. And just like that, the weight of the world hit me all at once. I walked through the office with the cardboard box in my hands, trying like hell to keep it together. But I didn't need to look at anyone to know what they were thinking. It was all over their faces. People glanced at me, then quickly turned away, like they were embarrassed to look me in the eye. I wasn't the only one who knew something was off. Jim, who I'd been tight with for years, stepped in front of me. His eyes flicked to the box, then back up to my face. He wasn't saying anything at first, but the concern was written all over him. "Why are you packing up?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. The words stuck in my throat, like they didn't want to come out. But they did. I didn't have a choice. "I'm gone," I said. "Steve fired me. Said I wasn't a good fit anymore." Jim's jaw clenched, his face hardened. "What? After all you've done? That's total crap." He shook his head, like he was trying to figure out some messed up puzzle. I nodded, feeling that old anger creeping back in. But I didn't have the energy to let it explode. Not now. I moved through the office, past desks, cubicles, all the eyes on me, but no one said anything. Dave saw me walking by and stopped dead in his tracks, eyes wide. His face was tight, like he'd been chewing on a piece of glass. "This is insane, man," he said, voice low but thick with disbelief. "You've been carrying this division. We've all seen it." I didn't say anything at first. I just kept walking, the box heavy in my hands, my heart heavier in my chest. As I passed, more people started to gather around. It wasn't anything loud or dramatic, just a small circle forming, like a silent protest to what had just happened. I could feel them watching me, their anger simmering beneath the surface, but I wasn't sure if I felt relief or something else. Part of me wanted to scream at them to stop, to not make a scene, but another part of me wanted to let them. It wasn't right. It didn't make sense. And if they wanted to stand up for me, hell, maybe I deserved it. I kept my face steady, like I wasn't crumbling inside, but the weight of it all was dragging me down. Then the door to Steve's office opened, and there he was, Steve Barron, all clean-cut and neat, just walking down the hallway like everything was normal. I could see him look at the small group of people around me, see the way they were all standing there, all quiet, all pissed off. But he didn't flinch, didn't even break stride. He saw us, nodded, and just walked right past. Didn't say a word. Didn't acknowledge what was happening, like it was just another Tuesday to him. I stood there, staring at his back as he disappeared down the hall, and for the first time in my career, I realized something. Steve didn't give a damn about any of us. I sat across from Mary, the HR rep, who'd only been with the company a couple of months. She was fumbling with a stack of papers, like she was hoping it would make all this go away. Her face wore that same forced sympathy everyone else had when they knew they were about to do something awful but couldn't back out of it. She handed me the papers, the standard separation agreement, she said, with a little smile that barely reached her eyes. "It's just business. Nothing personal." I didn't even glance at the papers. Instead, I slammed my phone on the table, the screen still lit with the termination email from Steve. Her eyes flicked down to it, and I could see her swallow, a quick, nervous movement. She tried to keep her voice steady, but I could hear the slight shake in it. "Tell me this is business, Mary," I said, and even I was surprised at how calm my voice sounded. Inside, I was ready to explode. Her face drained of color. She didn't have a good answer because she knew. She knew this was a mess, that it wasn't just business. It wasn't just anything. It was a cheap way to get rid of someone who'd been loyal for years, and she knew it wasn't right. Mary's eyes shifted, her hand resting on the papers like she was trying to come up with something, anything to make this feel more legitimate. But she couldn't. I didn't want to hear it anymore. I stood up abruptly, grabbing my box, and walked to the door. There was nothing left for me here. No words, no explanations, no apologies. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't even look up from the table. But when I glanced back as I reached the door, there was something in her eyes. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was understanding. I couldn't tell, but it was the kind of look that made me think she knew exactly how wrong this was. I walked out of HR, the door clicking shut behind me, and it felt like I was stepping into some kind of void. Like everything I'd been, everything I had worked for, was just gone. The hall was empty, quiet. I walked past desks where people pretended not to see me, and I couldn't shake the thought that this whole thing was just a game to Steve. To him, I was just another pawn in whatever scheme he was playing, a piece to move when it was convenient. I was pissed, sure, but I also felt like I'd been played for a fool, and what hurt most was that I had no choice but to walk away. No chance to defend myself. No chance to fight back. I didn't even care about the severance or the papers Mary had given me. What I couldn't wrap my head around was how easily they had discarded me. Like it didn't matter. Like none of it mattered. Just as I reached the elevator, Mary called out from behind me. "Hey, wait." She was walking fast to catch up, her voice low but insistent. "If you need a reference, let me know. This isn't right, and I'll back you up." For a second, I was caught off guard. I couldn't even think of a response. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I hit the elevator button and stepped inside, the doors closing in front of me, and I felt nothing. Just a hollow, empty space where everything I thought I knew had once been. I stepped out into the parking lot, the concrete hot under my shoes, the weight of everything crashing down. My hands were still shaking, and I didn't know what to do with myself. The world felt like it was spinning too fast, and I just needed something solid to hold on to. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed Matt. He picked up on the first ring. "Hey man," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just found out I got fired." There was a pause on the other end, just a long, quiet beat. And then Matt's voice came back, calm but thick with disbelief. "What the hell? They fired you?" I felt a lump rise in my throat. Of course Matt got fired too. We'd both been working our asses off, and now it was like someone had pulled the rug out from under us without even blinking. "Jesus," I muttered. "How are we supposed to deal with this?" Matt's voice softened, but it didn't lose its edge. "We don't. We get back up. There's a plan here. You just gotta trust it." The words hung in the air between us, and for a second, it felt like a lifeline. Maybe I could trust it. Maybe I could find some way to fight back. But I wasn't sure if I had the energy to believe that yet. "Yeah, okay," I said, though I wasn't sure if I was convincing him or myself. We sat there in silence for a moment. Then, like he always did, Matt shifted gears. "Hey, listen, I've been scouting a couple of places. I've already set up some interviews for us. You're not in this alone, all right?" I blinked, trying to wrap my mind around what he was saying. "You... what?" Matt's laugh was short, but genuine. "You think I was going to let you sit around and mope? Get your ass in gear, man. You're not the only one with options." That little spark of hope that had been barely flickering inside me suddenly flared up. Just a little. If Matt was already out there making moves, maybe I should be too. Maybe I could do this. "All right," I said, a little stronger this time. "I trust you, bro." "Good. I'll handle the rest. Just show up." He paused before adding, "We'll figure it out." We always do. The call ended, and I stood there for a minute, staring at the pavement beneath my feet. The weight was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, a faint hint of determination. Maybe I could trust it after all. A week passed, and I was still stuck in limbo. The interviews Matt set up, none of them had gone anywhere. I was sending out resumes, talking to people, but it felt like the doors were closing before I even had a chance to knock. The longer it dragged on, the more I felt like I was fading into nothing, like I didn't even matter anymore. Then, out of the blue, my phone buzzed. I looked down at the screen, Renegade Logistics. I hadn't heard of them before, but the name rang a bell. I picked up. "Hey, is this Daniel?" a smooth voice asked. "Yeah, who's this?" I replied. "This is Ted Crawford. We met a couple of years ago at that trade show in Vegas. How have you been?" My brain took a second to catch up. Ted Crawford, Renegade Logistics. I remembered the guy, sharp dresser, confident, the kind of guy who knew everyone in the room. He had an energy about him that made you want to listen. "I've been good," I said, still trying to piece everything together. "What's up?" "I'll get to it. Are you still looking for a job?" He didn't waste time with pleasantries. I felt a flash of hope, the first in days. "Yeah, actually. Been kind of a rough stretch lately." "Yeah, I figured. Listen, we could really use someone with your background. I've been following your work with the last team, and I think you'd be a great fit here." I didn't know what to say. The words were like a lifeline thrown at me from across an ocean. Yeah, I'd be interested in talking," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. Ted chuckled, and it was genuine. "Let's meet tomorrow. We'll figure out the details." The next day I walked into Renegade's office, the place clean and polished, way more professional than the cluttered chaos I'd gotten used to at Summit. Ted greeted me with a firm handshake, no pretending to be casual. He was all business, and that felt good. We sat down, and I could tell right away this conversation was different. He didn't treat me like just another hire, didn't talk down to me like Steve had done so many times. Ted asked questions that made me think, actually wanted to know how I could help them move forward, and even complimented the work I'd done with my old team. As we talked terms, he made me an offer. It wasn't a promotion, still a lateral move, but there was a salary bump, and more importantly, Ted said something that made me sit up straighter. He valued my leadership. He saw me as someone who could bring something to the table, not just fill a seat. It wasn't a huge win, but it felt like a solid start, like maybe I was finally getting some respect. It was a weight lifting off me, that heavy feeling that had been sitting on my chest for the last week. Maybe this was the fresh start I needed. I stood up, shook Ted's hand again, and left the office feeling lighter than I had in days. I pulled out my phone to text Matt, but before I could hit send, my phone buzzed again. "Yo, bro," Matt's voice came through, and I could hear the smile in his tone. "Renegade just offered me a gig too. We're in this together, man." For a second I couldn't believe it, both of us landing at the same place. It felt like we were climbing out of that hole together. "Are you serious?" I said, laughing. "Damn, that's awesome." "Yeah, man, we're in it. Let's get to work." And just like that, things were starting to click again. I settled into my new role at Renegade, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually where I belonged. The work was challenging, but in a way that made me want to push harder, be better. My team respected me, and for the first time since I'd walked out of Summit, I didn't feel like I was dragging myself through the day. But even as things at Renegade were starting to click, I couldn't help but hear the whispers from the old company. Summit was in free fall. I'd always known it wasn't the healthiest place to work, but now, with Steve at the helm, it was unraveling fast. Word spread through the grapevine that Steve was pushing the team harder than ever, trying to pull everything together, but the ship was sinking. I felt a strange satisfaction hearing about it. It was hard not to. Watching Steve scramble, trying to hold everything together, was like watching someone desperately trying to put out a fire with a garden hose. And I wasn't the only one noticing. Matt and I would trade stories, laughing bitterly at the chaos back at Summit. People were quitting, getting pushed out, leaving in waves. I wasn't surprised, but I was relieved. Relieved that I'd gotten out when I did. The place was unrecognizable, barely holding on by a thread. I'd gotten out, and somehow it felt like the universe was rewarding me for it. Meanwhile, Renegade was running smoother than ever. Ted and I had hit it off from day one, and the company was thriving. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. People respected each other. People worked hard, not because they were scared, but because they wanted to. I was checking my phone one afternoon, scrolling through emails when a text popped up from an old colleague from Summit, Chris. I hadn't heard from him in a while, so I clicked on it right away. "Hey, I don't know if you've heard, but Summit just lost the big contract with client name. pulled it this morning. They're screwed." I stared at the message for a while, letting it sink in. That was their biggest client, the one they'd been riding on for years. I didn't feel bad for them, not after everything that had happened, but I couldn't help but wonder how Steve was handling it. He'd spent so much time building his empire, and now it was all crumbling piece by piece. 6 months had passed since I left Summit. In that time, I'd found my rhythm at Renegade. I was managing a solid team now, in a leadership role, and everything was going better than I could have hoped. The pressure was there, but it was the kind that made me want to push harder, do better. We were landing big accounts, making a name for ourselves in the industry. My brother Matt was thriving too. We'd both found our footing, and together we were building something from the ground up. One morning, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach turn. Steve Barron. I let it ring for a second before answering, not sure what I was expecting. "Hey Daniel," Steve said, his voice smooth, like everything was fine. "It's Steve. Hope you're doing well." I didn't say anything right away. What was I supposed to say? After everything that had happened, I didn't want to hear his voice, but I held it together. "I'm good." "What's up?" I replied, keeping it short. "I know it's been a while, but I wanted to reach out," Steve said, and I could hear the shift in his tone, like he was trying to find the right words. "We've had some changes over here, and honestly, I could really use someone like you. We need you back to help clean up the mess. I'm willing to offer you a 15% raise to come back and get things back on track." I didn't hesitate, not for a second. "I'm not coming back, Steve. It's not about the money." There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear him squirming, trying to find a way to reel me in. "You're making a mistake," he finally said, his voice tight, but I could tell he was masking frustration. I didn't let his words hit me. I couldn't. I was done. I felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth, but I kept it to myself. "I'm not making a mistake," I said, firm and calm. "I've got something better now." The line went dead quiet, and before he could say anything else, I hung up. I stared at my phone for a second, feeling something lighter, almost freeing. That was it. The last bit of unfinished business. I walked into my office, ready for my next meeting with Matt. As I sat down at the table, I couldn't help but think about how different things were now. I wasn't just a cog in some broken machine anymore. I was in control. My phone buzzed again, and I looked down to see a text from Chris, a former coworker from Summit. He didn't text me much, so I opened it right away. "Heard Steve got reassigned to a much smaller role. Guess you made the right choice, huh?" The words hit me like a punch in the gut, but not in a bad way. It felt like the last piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Steve was officially out of the picture. It wasn't just that I was better off without him. It was that the whole company was too. I leaned back in my chair, a small grin spreading across my face. That was it. I'd gotten what I needed from Summit. I didn't need to go back. And now, with everything I had in front of me, I was finally in control.